Hello, y'all. This is Coach Lindsay with the Jackass Podcast, and this is a special episode today because when I was thinking about doing my episode this week, I wanted to talk a lot about WrestleMania. So I decided to just do a WrestleMania preview, and I'll probably do this for the big ones like SummerSlam and like Survivor Series and Royal Rumble next year if I'm still doing this. Again, this is Coach Lindsay from the Jackass Podcast. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on YouTube. I'll put clips up all the time. I'll start putting some on Spotify a little bit more. Excuse me, damn. So today we're gonna talk. It's gonna be nothing but wrestling. We're just gonna talk about WrestleMania. We're not gonna really talk NXT. And in all honesty, we're gonna look at two things. One, I've been a wrestling fan since I can remember. It was always on TV. It was a Saturday morning thing with Superstars, and at night on TBS with Saturday Night Event. That's how I grew up watching wrestling, especially being in Texas. And then the first wrestling match I remember going to must have been a WCCW match because I know the missing link was there, and I just remember that from it. I remember being in an old dingy place, but the first match I remember going to was Superstars taping on a Friday night at the Freeman Coliseum. So that is what I love about wrestling. Um, so this is what we're gonna do. First, we're gonna talk since I bring up my history. The first WrestleMania I really remember is WrestleMania 8 from Indianapolis in the Hoosier Dome. Dude, that thing, I remember those matches. One of I'm sorry, y'all. One of my top 10 favorite matches is on that card. Um, and I'll get the credentials out right. My favorite wrestler of all time is Undertaker. Hands down, great character, great development. Got to show his wrestling skill later on in his career. Uh, and always loved his matches. Um, he's on a couple of these matches because I just remember loving them. And it may be because I'm older when some of these matches happen. They go back to when I was a kid and a high schooler and those type of matches. So, first and foremost, we're going to go over the. we're going to go over my top 10 WrestleMania matches of all time. And I'm going to go from 10 to 1. This is my top matches. These are matches I love that if I sit down and they're on, it's a remote drop. So for me, number 10 is Chris Jericho versus Shawn Michaels, WrestleMania 19. I remember the build-up to that match. I just love it. Because the thing about me, the match is a culmination to the build-up. And I may not have been the biggest wrestling fan for here and there. But once we got around Royal Rumble season, I was always really paying attention. Even if I was just paying attention to the top 10s on YouTube and stuff, I was paying attention. So when WrestleMania came around, I kind of knew what was going on. This is when I was still kind of really in it. That Jericho versus Michaels match was just a great match. It was great to see Shawn Michaels come back and be Mr. WrestleMania with someone who was like him. And the story they told was really good. And then you go later on, they have another great story, like 5-10 years down the road. So that, to me, that's the number 10 match. Number 9 is Kane versus Taker, the first one. They had like 2 or 3 WrestleMania matches, but that first one on WrestleMania 15, where the original story of Undertaker and Kane culminated, that was a hell of a match. Um, it was a hell of a story told in the ring. For it takes so much out of Undertaker because he had looked so invincible for so long, and then he had someone his size, his brother, and that match was just one that I always remember. Now, there's other things in that I do remember, but that match in particular is one of my favorites. Number 8 is from WrestleMania 13, Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. That was probably the best in-ring match Stone Cold had, because it was before he became the true Stone Cold character, where his matches weren't as technical, but he was working with Bret Hart. And that match and the way they turned and the emotion of that match and the way it made Steve Austin be the cool heel, but the good guy, the heelish baby face that he was, because it showed he didn't give up. It was kind of same road that the Road Warriors took for such a long time. They'd be nasty, but they didn't really break rules, and they didn't ever give up. So that Stone Cold Bret Hart match, the way it ended with the blood streaming down Stone Cold's face, uh, even though he lost the match because he got knocked out, that was such a great match. Like, it's so memorable, and there's so many scenes in it that are memorable. So that is my number 8 match of all time. My number 7 match is from WrestleMania 12 from LA. And it's not the Shawn Michaels Bret Hart Iron Man match. I didn't grow up watching the Broadways where the 60-minute matches and stuff like that. But I like the character driven stuff and the backyard brawl. And by this time I had met Roddy Piper. I have a picture as a little me with Roddy Piper. So he's someone that I've always liked. And his and Goldust backlot brawl in Hollywood, even with the corny OJ Simpson stuff, was still such a good match. It was a great story to tell. It showed the characters, it showed the roughness and what Goldust was trying to build at the time. It was probably it's probably one of my favorite all out matches that they had. So and just like I said, most of my matches are story driven. And you'll see that through this list. Um WrestleMania 12, Eddie Guerrero versus Kurt Angle. Not only was that a great like showing of Eddie Guerrero and the trick with the boot and him being able to stand up at the end of the night with his title. Kurt Angle was such a great wrestler that the two of them together was just magic to watch anytime you got to watch it. And on that grand of a stage, they both stepped up. So, yeah, I know we're at number 6, halfway through my list, and Eddie versus Angle is on there. You can't really have a top 10 list without either one of them on it when it comes to matches at WrestleMania. And you'll see I got Angle on here again. But now let's go to my number 5 match is TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17. There's still stuff showing from that match all the time. There's still so much from that match. And the classic part being Edge jumping and hitting Jeff Hardy with the spear and all the stuff that happened in that match. And it's the match that stole the show because the one I remember the most, I think even Taker and Triple H had their first match at WrestleMania. That was a good match, but it doesn't make this list. The Rock Austin match doesn't make this list. Even think about it. WrestleMania 17 also had um, Shane O'Mac versus Vince McMahon when Linda got up, slapped Vince McMahon. That card is so true, but the match of the night was TLC 2. They stole the show. And there were a lot of good matches on that card. Because also think this is around the time of the invasion angle starting and all that. But just that match stole the show and showed you what WWE was running with, showed you how good they are, and those guys just stepped up. And that was a time when you had all these individuals, but they had a really strong tag team division. And if you've heard some of my podcasts, I've complained kind of about tag team wrestling now because I always found tag teams I loved. Um, I think next week on the podcast, I'll go through my top 10 tag teams of all time. And you'll see what I'm talking about because there have been some really good tag teams, but you just got to watch and like tag team wrestling when you actually have tag teams doing it. Oh man, it's so much fun to watch. And just those three teams, like I loved Christian and Edge in every iteration they had of them, from them being in part of the Brood to being the goofballs they became to the Hardys, kind of being the punky guys to what they eventually became with Team Extreme and Lita and all that. Because we'll be honest, my wife's not in the room. Lita was my crush, so uh, like she was my crush. It was between her and Trish. I like Lita more. So, but just that whole thing. And then the Dudley boys, even with Spike Dudley and all that, just all those components. And it wasn't like crowded or anything like that. They told a story, you got to see it. They had a bunch of spots, but not too many, and they made sense to what they were doing. But just such a great match. So that was number 5, TLC number 2 of WrestleMania 17. So number 4, and this isn't wrestling in a sense, but it's the sports entertainment part of it. And it's probably one of the greatest showing of how the build ended up changing the night of the match, and it's Hogan versus Rock. And as a spectacle, that is one of the greatest spectacles of all time. And it was so great watching them play the crowd, and the crowd starts booing Rock, cheering Hogan, because Hogan was their hero, and Hogan was their hero for a long time. And they never went with the whole NWO thing because they had their Canadian stars. They have the honor and stuff that they believe in and what Hogan stood for at one time. And just the craziness of that night, that match, and had two people who knew how to listen to a crowd and showed you a doctorate level education in it, and still ended up cheering Rock when he actually won the match. And so that match as a spectacle is one of the greatest of all time. And it's number 4 on my list. Number 3 on my list is from the first ever WrestleMania I watched. This is probably one of the first times I actually fell in love with the wrestling side of it. And oddly enough, it's another Piper match. It's Piper versus Bret Hart for the IC title. They had a little storyline in between. And I could have put, like, thinking about it from there, you could put Savage and Ric Flair, because that was a good match. You put the end of the show with Hogan and Sid Justice on there. But this match to me stole the show. I always remember this match. It may be because I liked Roddy Piper and I liked Bret Hart. And that time was almost a babyface versus babyface match. And it's kind of a passing of the torch at the time from Piper, who never really needed a title in WWE, but he got one here and there, kind of as a hey, man, we love what you did for us, so we're gonna give you a title for a minute. But Piper versus Bret Hart, that was probably the best match of the night that night. It's the one I remember most. Um, there are a lot of things about that one I remember. I remember Lex Luger coming out as a narcissist. I remember loving Big Boss Man and all that. But in that 8-man tag that they had, but for some reason that match really sticks with me. That was also the match where they started the Undertaker streak, I think. I think it was WrestleMania 8. So that would have been Jimmy Snuka, I think. I might be wrong, but it might have been Jimmy Snuka. Um, but that's I just remember, and the way that Brett won the match on the rollout of the sleeper hold is a beautiful match. Great way to end that match. Um, Number two for me is the Flair retirement match versus Shawn Michaels. That was probably the best thing Flair could do at that time. And Shawn Michaels, being as great of a performer as Shawn Michaels is, got so much out of Ric Flair, got so much emotion out of that match. And that match honored the whole career of Ric Flair. That match was so emotional. And you could feel it at the end of that match. Not even when on camera you see Shawn Michaels talk, I love you. And then he gave him the sweet chin music, gave him a kiss at the top of his forehead at the end of it. There was so much emotion to that match, and the build up to it was so great. Because you have Ric Flair, who's one of the greatest on the stick ever, one of the greatest on the mic, one of the greatest promos ever. And Shawn, in his older years, got better at being a promo. He was never great at it, but he wasn't getting crushed by Flair. He was playing more the silent old man, like the silent old killer type than the loud, boisterous character he had been for so long. So that was a great build up, great match. Now, to me, the best match of all time is Taker versus Michaels at 25. The build up to that match was great. Them going against each other and them continuing the storyline of next year in the career match for Shawn Michaels. But that match and the entrances of that match with the because Undertaker is one of my favorite, like probably has some of the best entrances. Probably between him and Triple H have the two greatest combination of entrances in the WrestleMania. But Michaels is not far behind because you remember him coming down on the zip line at WrestleMania 12. He always has some kind of grand entrance in a lot of his entrances. But this one was even better. Him coming down from the heavens, descending down on that platform. It was just great. The way that match ended, the way that match has carried you through the whole thing. And I know there are plenty of other matches that could be mentioned on this list, but this to me is the best match of all time. Not just because I'm not just because I'm a Undertaker fan, but just the wrestling in that match was so great. So and here's the funny thing: when I originally put this list together in my head, I actually had Angles versus Michaels on there too. And that was a great match. Like, that's not a knock on anybody. There are probably so many other matches. Yes, I know everybody says the Ricky Steamboat versus Randy Savage is one of those top tier matches. I can complain about the slow match, like the way, way, way too fast matches, but sometimes it was just really slow in that match. Even with George the Animal Steel and Miss Elizabeth. Um, so that's probably one of the reasons. Um, but this is my top 10, and I'll just go a quick overview of it again. Jericho versus Michael, and we're gonna go 10-1. Jericho versus Michaels at WrestleMania 19. Kane versus Taker at WrestleMania 15. Hart versus Stone Cold at WrestleMania 13. Piper versus Goldust at WrestleMania 12. The Backlot brought Eddie versus Angle at WrestleMania 20. TLC 2 at WrestleMania 17 between Edge and Christian, the Hardy Boys and the Dudley Boys. Rock versus Hogan, and I want to say it had to be 18. 18. Yeah, it had to be 18. Um, Piper versus Bret Hart at WrestleMania 8 for the Intercontinental Championship. Flair's last official match at WWE versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 24. And then the next year, Taker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. That is my top 10 list. If you have problems with it, put comments on. I'll respond to them next time. Probably on the recap show that I'll do. Probably Tuesday of next week. Probably do a regular podcast and then I'll do a WrestleMania recap after the Raw after WrestleMania because we all know something's going to happen there. Now let's talk. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the hell. Hell did it go? I had a card up. I don't want that one. What's the actual WrestleMania card? We gotta get on my damn nerves. I had a damn card up. There we go. All right, I think this was the one I was looking at a minute ago. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to go in the order of the matches. Starting with Saturday. And I will go through it. Night one card. So this looks like it's going to be AJ Lee versus Becky Lynch for the Intercontinental Championship. Will be first up. That'll probably be a really good match. I know people are like, why are there not some other women in this? I have a feeling there will be some to make a appearance. Everybody has to remember, WrestleMania is about selling the biggest show of the year and trying to get as many of these people who have had at least some sort of storyline going for a little while to finish off the the year and then start a new year. So you finish off AJ Lee and Becky at WrestleMania for the Intercontinental Championship. I think AJ Lee right now wins that because there's so many marquee matchups that you can have with her in that belt. And then she can kind of feed and build some new stars. A Roxanne Perez or a Sol Ruka when she comes up, or who else is young? A Lyra Valkyria, and then have some great more matches with a Charlotte Flair, an Alexa Bliss, like all these other women, an Io Sky. That would be a hell of a match. A Kyrie Sane, and just have these matches. And so I think it'll be AJ Lee, and maybe she loses it SummerSlam, Survivor Series, but she still has some great matches and some great feuds. That's where I think that's going. I'm just reading it backwards from the card, so I don't know if this is how it's going. This is just the one that I have online. Next one, which is a really short build, but I think it was to get both them in there because people were complaining Gunther didn't have anyone. And every storyline that happened around Seth Rollins recently had kind of gotten injured, him included. So, and him coming back a little early, there will probably be interference from the Vision in this. And there should be to keep that kind of little storyline going. But I think it'll be I think it'll be a Gunther thing. So Paul Heyman can owe Gunther. And then I think from there it goes Gunther versus Brock Lesnar at some point in time for Brock Lesnar's career. I think if you're gonna do the career killer, he's got to kill the beast after like an Obafemi, maybe at next year's WrestleMania, and you build it off of that. And this is the start of that storyline that goes on for a whole year. Drew McIntyre versus Jacob Fatu in an unsanctioned match. Both can be extremely violent. I think this is to build Jacob Fatu up so he can get to a title. So I think it'll be Jacob Fatu that goes over. Um, I don't think Drew. I think Drew's got enough cachet that he doesn't have to win the match. So I'll say Jacob goes over in this one. But I think it's been a great build. It's been a cool build. And just showing how strong both of them are. That one's a good one. Usos and LA Knight versus Austin Theory, Logan Paul, and I Show Speed. This one, I think it'll be the Vision and I Show Speed win somehow. I just don't know how. I Show Speed does something crazy. Danhausen probably comes out in this match because he's been attached to this storyline somehow. And curses the Usos or LA Knight or something stupid. So we'll see. I think that'll be a shorter match. I am looking forward to Stephanie Vaquer and Liv Morgan. Here's my thing. Here's what I think happens. I think Liv Morgan wins, and Roxanne and Raquel both turn on her. And lives on her own. She builds another little stable. And has to fight those two off for a little while. And Stephanie gets to go do some other stuff, but then come back after Liv and maybe team with the Raquel and Roxanne versus Liv Morgan to get the title back. I think that's how it goes. Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton on night one. There's a part of me would really like to see Randy win. And that's because I have respected what Randy Orton's done for the most part in his career. But I think the story they're telling lends to Cody Rhodes winning. I don't know when Cody's going to turn heel. I don't know when that's going to happen. I don't know if that's going to happen. But it's probably going to happen sometime this year. So I'm going to say that Cody Rhodes wins that match. Pat McAfee gets involved somehow, gets his ass whooped. But Cody Rhodes wins that match. And I think he does it in a dirty way, but one that he can explain away for right now. Not chicken shit way, just a dirty way. So that's my thoughts on that one. So now night 2 card. So I know that Obafemi and Brock Lesnar are gonna be in the first hour. And the ladder match is gonna be in the first hour. Here's the thing. I think Obafemi and Brock gonna start this off. It's gonna be a bull rush. It's gonna be quick. It's gonna be sudden. And Oba's gonna come out on top. And then Brock's gonna chase Oba for a little bit, trying to get that win back at like SummerSlam. And they're going to build Oba up. Because Oba's already getting awesome reaction. I don't think you kill that and say, okay, let's do this. No, I think you let Oba win at WrestleMania against the Beast, and we start seeing the cracks in the armor. And somewhere in there, that's where Gunther gets to be the career killer with Brock Lesnar. That's what I think happens eventually. Penta, Javon Evans, Dragon Lee, JD McDonough, and Rusev in a ladder match for the WWE Intercontinental Championship. This unfortunately comes off as a throwaway match for me. It's going to be really exciting with the likes of Penta, Javon Evans, Dragon Lee, and JD McDonough in there. and Rusev's gonna be used as a big body that you always have in the ladder match. Um, I think it's Javon Evans that wins, 'cause or Penta keeps it and beats JD McDonough, like knocks JD McDonough out, and somehow, and Javon just puts on a show. Those are my calls, but I really think if it's not Javon Evans, it's gonna be Penta keeping the championship. I'm leaning more towards Javon Evans because he's coming in as part, but Penta's got a lot of stuff built up. So maybe you can let him keep this title for another 3-4 months and then see if he's going to be someone next in line for the championship. I don't know if he's going to get built up that quick. Maybe he goes over SmackDown. Maybe he goes to tag team champion with Ray Phoenix or something like that. But I think Penta, it's either going to be Penta or Javon. I don't think JD McDonough brings it back. I don't think he's had the build, and I don't think Dragon Lee has the build right now for it. I think it's those two. Let's see. Now, the women's tag team champion, I think Nia Jax and Lash Legend keep it somehow. I either think they do it in such a dominant fashion, it's not funny, or they just get lucky and everybody else is fighting amongst themselves. And I think there's another Charlotte Flair Bayley feud that comes out of this. And I think the Bellas go home for a little while because it's a great nostalgia act to come into WrestleMania with, but I don't think they're going to let them win the titles. If there is any team that they might push to win the titles, it would be the Bella Twins. And then they could build. I think the only team that you build off that with is either Lash and Nia or Bailey and Myra because Bliss and Flair don't need it. They're great champions, but they don't need it as a tag team or individually. So my first guess is gonna be Nia and Lash win. That's what I think. I think they're building that up, and then eventually Lash is gonna turn on Nia. Probably after they do lose, and it's Nia that takes a pin. Finn Balor versus Dominic Mysterio. I hope Finn wins. Just because Dominic's a chicken shit heel. Uh, I just hope Finn wins. That is my hope. That is what I hope, seriously, is that Finn wins and that we have a good match between them. Not that Dominic's bad, I just don't like Dominic as much. I really love the fact that he plays such a hateable character. It's so great to watch, but I could give a fuck. Like, the storyline's weak in comparison to some of the other ones you could have. Kinda like the Io Sky Asuka storyline would have been better. Actually, that storyline would have been better than the Intercontinental Championship match that they just threw together. Oh, to me, but what do I know? um, Sami Zayn versus Trick Williams for United States Championship. I think it's gonna be Trick. I think Trick's got the star power to take over Sami Zayn right now, and I just love watching Trick Williams playing that jackass of a heel, of a babyface heel. It's weird because the crowd loves him. So that's what I think is gonna happen. Jade Cargill versus Rhea Ripley. I think this is gonna be a good match. I don't know if Rhea needs the win, but I think Jade Cargill needs to show up in the match and actually have a good match. And Rhea hadn't had any stinkers. Like, I watched some of her first ones over the past couple nights. Gotta start just binging WrestleManias here and there. So I think if Jade doesn't put up a good show, it'll be Rhea. If Jade can come close to matching Rhea, it'll be Jade. I don't think they know which way they want to go yet. I think they wanted to see what they could get out of Jade Cargill in this run. and let's put her under the lights. Let's see what she can do. And let's see if she steps up to the brightness of the lights. But I'm still going to lean towards Rhea because Rhea's the more popular of the two. Jade Cargill's not nearly as hated as Rhea Ripley is loved. So I think you give the crowd Rhea Ripley. That's my thought on that. And CM Punk and Roman Reigns. I don't know who wins this. I've liked this build. It hadn't been the strongest by either, but I think there's some genuine disdain that you can see in there. But I don't know. Because I don't know if you want to treat the World Heavyweight Championship like you treated the Universal Championship for so long as one that didn't get shown almost every week. I don't know if it's built up that cachet. So I think CM Punk will win. I think it'll be that first legitimate main event win for him. I think Roman goes away for a little while and let me see what happens. Or there could just be a whole clusterfuck that happens in this match. And we just see. I think it'll be entertaining. I think you'll leave going, what the fuck at the end of it. But like on the legitimately ended match, I think it'll be CM Punk. So that's my predictions for WrestleMania. Like I said, I'll talk about this again probably on next Tuesday, the night after Raw happens, and do a WrestleMania recap. Y'all, I hope you like, share, follow. Y'all have a good one. Peace.